Hello and welcome to another edition of Master in Market. My name is Grady Arno and I'm Associate Director here at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. And I have the pleasure of having Koushik with me from the class of 2020 MMS FOB program. And I'm excited to talk to him about his current role. So Koushik, if you could start with an introduction, that'd be fantastic.
Wonderful. So I am Koushik. I was in the Fuqua's Masters in Management, Master of Management class of 2020. And right after the MMS 2020, I came back to India and I'm working as a regional director for Bachpan Play Schools and Academic Heights Play School. Academic Heights Public School. And Before Fuqua, I did my undergrad in engineering in Hyderabad itself. And right after that, I worked in an edtech startup for a year and I would if Fuqua. Yeah, I hope that gives an intro about me.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Koushik. So tell me a little bit about your role with Bachpan Play Schools and Academic Heights Public Schools.
Yeah, so I'm the regional director for AP and Telangana. So that's two states in India. So Bachpan Play Schools and Academic Heights Public Schools are a national brand or a national chain of schools with around 1100 schools of Bachpan and 120 schools of Academic Heights. So Bachpan is a kindergarten school and Academic Heights is a formal school up to class 12. So I take care of both the states, AP and Telangana. And what I basically do is what defines is basically I provide support to all the schools. So each school has different needs, requirements, be it with academics, be it with curriculum, be it with marketing, be it with the technology. So I act as a liaison between the head office, between our CEO and the school, and directly make sure all their problems are addressed by keeping them in the pipeline and coming up with new solutions for the schools.
That's fantastic. And it seems like you have a wide variety of responsibilities. So how do you manage your day to day and what's your day to day look like?
To be honest, Grady, my day to day is completely different. I don't have a same day every day. So, like I mentioned, right? So each school has a different requirement. So based on that, I just have to put on that hat and work on it right away. So it just keep fluctuating, but I would say it's cyclical most of the time. Like right now, it's a summer break and school start in the month of June and July. So right now, I'm focused a lot more about setting up the whole year plan, setting up the whole marketing piece and setting up the whole basically everything for the year to start. And once the year starts, we focus more on trainings of teachers, making sure our R&D team is providing the continual support, be it for exams and all that stuff. So it depends. So, but day to day, it's more about interacting with a lot of teachers, students, and understanding their pain points.
So it's been about 3 years since you've graduated from Fuqua. What has been the biggest thing that you've learned since graduating?
So one thing that I would say that I'm using a lot in Fuqua, from Fuqua right now is basically delegation of tasks. So as once you get step up to a managerial position, you have to understand that you're not the one doing all the job. So you have to be tactful enough in delegating the right task to the right person. Otherwise, the whole system fails and your whole project, what your outcome is not going to get delivered. So that's one like wonderful thing that I learned at Fuqua, especially during my FCCP. So that's one thing that I understood. And another great thing I would say is the business communication class from Fuqua. Like every day I'm addressing teachers, students, parents, sometimes 10, 15 people like my team members, or sometimes even crowds of up to 500, 600 people. And the skills that I picked up from Fuqua about how do I address people, how do I know the audience. So that's one thing that's been really helpful, and that's something that I don't think I can say I've mastered, but I'm trying to master it right now.
I think we're always trying to master that. So just so anyone that's wondering what FCCP means, that's Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum. So could you talk to us about that experience and how that's transferred over to your current role?
Yeah. So that was the FCCP was one of the most influential classes, I would say, of Fuqua. So going into Fuqua, I was a little confused about, I mean, I wouldn't say confused, but I was just curious about consulting. And that's when I heard about FCCP, wherein you work with a client or a real company and so address their issues, right? So first term, it broken down into two terms, right? So one term, I was working very well with the client, and right after the winter break, things changed because my client's requirements changed, the data changed, everything changed. So we immediately had to like switch everything and change everything. And at that point was another, like I mentioned, delegation of tasks. So our team was working on one set of things, and we quickly had to change. So we took up initial responsibilities, and each one was delegating tasks to another. So that's one thing about Fuqua or FCCP that I've taken, and I've translated it to my current role. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you mentioned that you had a slight interest in going to consulting when you started the program. So what was your original goal coming into the program, and how did you decide about Bachpan was the best fit for you?
So I knew that getting into education space, getting into the education sector was my long-term goal, even before getting into Fuqua. But right after Fuqua, I wanted to explore consulting and finance for a bit and see how that works out for me. But again, COVID happened and I had to move back to India. But yeah, so the FCCP, I would say, has given me a fair bit of knowledge about consulting and working in education as the regional director now. I'm picking up a little more finance along with the finance classes at Fuqua. So yeah, this was pretty much my goals, I would say, when I was joining Fuqua. And yeah, I would have wanted to work as a consultant maybe for a year or two, but again, not everything's in our hands, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kaushik's graduation year, it was spring 2020 when they were all sent home during spring break for COVID. So didn't get to experience working in the US for very long or at all. So very unfortunate, but I hope you're happy in your current role. So tell us a little bit about your current role and how you're managing two different roles. So you're working for Bachpan Play Schools and the Academic Heights Public School. How are those different, and what's that look like?
Yeah, so the rules are completely different, I would say. I mean, the core is still the same, but the requirements are completely different because Bachpan is a preschool, it's an elementary school, and the kids are of up to 5 years. So from age of 3 years to 6 years, I would say. So 3 to 6. So that demographic requires a complete different kind of trainings that I give to the teachers or kind of curriculum that I'm bringing up. The R&D team has to work completely differently than in a formal school that's up to grade 12. See, in a formal school, kids are learning like regular skills, like coding skills, like Python and other stuff. But in a elementary school, kids are not learning that. Kids are there for an exposure of school and stuff. So though the requirements are completely different, but the whole core is still the same. It's still education, right? So the same now. If I talk about technology in this, it's still the same technology that works in Bachpan and Academic Heights, but the use cases are different. But so though they seem a little different, but again, it still boils down to the same core of same working ethics and nuances.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you have a lot of things going on at once, as we've talked about, and managing all that. How do you go about that? You talked a little bit about that with the FCC program, but how do you make sure that you're managing those priorities correctly?
Yeah. So one thing that I usually like to do is basically we before anything else, so we'll list out all the priorities. So I'll give you a real example. Now the academic year is going to start in the month of June. So right now I have my list of priorities set down uh, in the month of April itself, March and April, and we have all the lists planned out, and we graded based on how the priority of it, like how soon do we need to implement that, and based on that, if it is not aligning to the greater vision of the organization and the ultimate goal of where we want to see this organization going, we just put it on the back burner, maybe take it up whenever there's free time. And that one thing that prioritizing is something that uh, I think I'm kind of becoming good at, because I will probably have to be the one who will give the team the task to do it. So if I don't do that properly, so the teams are working on different projects, which are probably not going to be helpful in the immediate future, right? So what we usually do is we have a great tech team in house. So we built our own tech, wherein we, just like how you have Asana and Trello. So we use some of those softwares, but with an in-house software to assign the tasks to teams. and I am on top of every task, managing about understanding what the timeline's looking like and how is it going. So basically pre-planning and making sure everything is going as per our schedule. So that's basically how we do it.
Yeah, that's perfect. And what is the office culture like? You've talked about how you manage a team, but what's the office culture like, and how does it compare to any of your previous experiences?
So the office culture, I would say it's completely different from what I've expected. So usually you have your peers from somebody of your age group, right? So, but if you're asking me, I would say the median of my office age is around 35 to 40. That's like 10 years elder to me. But
Yeah,
and they're just taking directions from me. But everybody's too supportive. Everybody's wants to learn something, and everybody is collaborative because that's how it works. And just like how I am picking up different roles, so is expected from the team. We have a very small team. We try to keep a lean team, making sure that everybody's picking up different projects at the same time with their core capabilities. So, for example, a tech person who's building a tech is not just in the tech, but is also in the customer support because he needs to understand what the schools are require. So they work cross. We have a lot of cross-functional teams, and that's one of the key reasons why we've been doing this successfully so far. And since COVID, despite the COVID outbreak, when it took a lot of other organizations to a couple of months to come up, we built the whole thing and we were ready to roll out in probably like 10 days. So we had all that ready, and that was my key defining moment. So that is when I realized, okay, that's an opportunity for me to get into this. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's fantastic. That's great to hear. It's always good to hear when a company's able to be nimble and move quickly. So, you mentioned before coming to the MMS program, you thought about going to consulting or the finance sector, but you knew that education was always your goal. So, what does your future goals look like?
So future right now, I would say is a little different from what we're doing right now. We're trying to build a complete educational tech ecosystem. So that is completely focused on. So now a little bit of background about the education system in India. We have a lot of tech companies, ed tech companies as such in India, but the core efficiency of data driven and the core efficiency and coming out with their outcomes based on pure data is a little low, and that has picked up the past 4 or 5 years, I would say. So we want our organization to I don't know, maybe build a system, an ecosystem wherein all the decisions are data driven, and everybody in the organization, though they're an educationist, though they have a PhD, or they're wonderful philosophers, we want them to derive their conclusions from data, and we're trying to build that ecosystem completely. So I would say we are moving a little from the traditional education company more towards a tech driven education company. So that I would say is my end goal, probably like 5 7 years down the line. uh, but yeah, so, I mean, so far whatever, I think we're on track to doing that, but so far so good.
That's great to hear. And what would be your last question? What's your one piece of advice to someone that's interested in going into the education sector, following either their MMS type of degree or just any interest in going into the ed tech sector?
Yeah, so I would say education industry is a phenomenal industry wherein you're not just see if you're in finance. So somebody like me, I want to explore multiple things. I want to be in the marketing team for a few months, be in the tech team for a few months. So you have the privilege of doing that in the education industry. And what matters in the education industry is not about how much you know, but how well are you in working with different sets of people. And I think Fuqua really helps you build that kind of a skill wherein you're working with different sets of people, because sometimes you have to understand some people I have PhDs in the R&D team who are core into research and development. They don't understand data, so you have to put down your data hat and then go down to their level to explain them how this works. And a tech person will not understand what a curriculum is, so you have to talk to him. And so that's basically it, right? So you have having the skill to work with cross functional teams and making sure everybody is aligning so on the same target. So that, I think, that is a crucial aspect in the education industry, and that building that skill, I think, will help you go a long way in the education industry.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. Well, Koushik, thank you so much for your time today. It's great to see that you're still representing Fuqua on your chest and also have so much to share about the education industry. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Grady. Thank you. It's always nice to talk to you and other fellow people.